This time I'll call the meeting to order. I note that it is 5:01 on September 22nd, 2022. This time I'll recognize staff to call the roll.
Curtis Casefang.
I'm here. Here.
John Reese is excused. Rob Allen.
Present.
Wes Tripp.
Here.
Jordan Ryland.
Here.
And Barden Colbreth.
Present.
As staff noted, John Reese is in excused absence today, and we do have a quorum present. Welcome to the September 2022 meeting of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission's Certificate of Appropriateness Committee. My name is Wes Tripp, and I'm chair of this committee. I'll ask that all members of the public, if you have not already done so, please sign the attendance roster up front. Agenda and staff reports are available online, and a handout of the meeting procedure is available as well. The Certificate of Appropriateness Committee and the Raleigh Historic Development Commission as a whole is a city council appointed body that consists of residents of historic districts, architects, intern architects, architectural consultants and contractors, attorneys and historians, urban planners, as well as historic preservationists. At this time, I will call on each commission member to introduce themselves and to highlight their relevant experience. We'll start with Rob.
Rob Allen. I am a resident of the Boylan Heights Historic District, and I am a project manager with an architecture firm here in Raleigh.
Barden.
Barden Colbreth. I've lived in Raleigh for 22 years, just outside of the Oakwood Historic District in Idlewild. Previously, I served as the chair of the Historic Cemeteries Advisory Board for the city.
And again, my name is Wes Tripp. I'm chair of the commission, and I'm a local attorney here in Raleigh. Next, Jordan.
My name is Jordan Ryland. I'm a local architect and a 15-year Raleigh resident.
Curtis.
Curtis Casefang, Oakwood resident, former chair of the commission, and I'm an architectural consultant.
Raz, will you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm Francis Raspberry. Typically, I go by Raz. I'm an attorney with a local law firm, and I'm legal counsel to the Certificate of Appropriateness Committee.
And staff, will you please introduce yourselves?
Good evening. My name is Erin Morton. I am a preservation planner with the city for 2.5 years. I have a master's in historic preservation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Colette Canane, also staff to the commission. I have worked for the city for about 4.5 years and also have a master's in historic preservation.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
And before we make that motion, I don't see that anyone has arrived. So the applicants for 1011 Oberlin have let us know they'd like to continue their case to the next meeting. All
right, with that change to the agenda, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Note that the approval of the agenda was approved unanimously. This time I'll entertain a motion to waive reading of the minutes.
So moved.
Are there any corrections or additions that anyone is aware of?
No.
Entertain a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes have been approved unanimously. I'll recognize staff to touch on minor work applications for the past month.
5 minor work applications were approved this month.
All right. We're now ready to hear applications. Prior to the meeting, notice has been sent to property owners within 100 feet of the properties in question. Legal ad was placed and signage has been posted at the site. Commission members received a copy of each application, staff reports, and were to have visited each property. Staff reports were made publicly available with the agenda. North Carolina law provides that major work applications must be approved in an evidentiary hearing and that persons have an opportunity to address an application if they desire. We are now ready to conduct the evidentiary hearing phase of the meeting. Evidentiary hearings are conducted in a quasi-judicial format. During the hearing, the committee receives evidence to determine that proposed changes are not incongruous with the special character of the district or the historic property. We review this evidence against guidelines referenced in the city ordinance before issuing a certificate. Each application is heard in the same way as listed in the meeting procedure handout. The quasi-judicial format of the hearing requires that we be impartial. The written staff reports are evidence presented just as any other evidence and were made available to us, the applicants, and the public at the same time. If any of us have had reason to discuss the specific details of an application before today, we will ask to be excused from hearing that application. There is no time limit on testimony, but repetition is discouraged. Because of the quasi-judicial format of our hearings, that is, that the commission hears evidence and then judges whether the change is not incongruous, we are required by North Carolina law to affirm or swear persons that speak before the commission and offer evidence. All speakers will be affirmed at the beginning of each case. Staff will be sworn or affirmed now for all cases on the agenda. Staff that will be presenting today, if you will please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give on the matters on today's agenda is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Erin Morton, I do.
I do also.
All right, first up is COA 0064 2022 319 East Jones Street. Are there any members of the committee who have an interest in the matter or otherwise feel that they cannot be impartial or fair in hearing this case? Hearing none, have the applicant come forward, please. Ask to please state your name and address for the record.
Erin Sterling Lewis, 1229 Cortland Drive.
Mr. Leandro, will you be presenting today?
Rob Leandro, and it's 319 East Jones Street, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Will both of you be presenting today?
We'll probably both have input.
Okay, let's go ahead and swear both of you in. Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'll note that the property owner, Mr. Leandro, is present. At this time, I'll recognize staff to make a presentation on the application.
This is case COA 0064 2022. This was heard previously and deferred, so I'll go through a summary of the project request and photographs for the sake of our two new members here. So this is 319 East Jones Street. It is in the Oakwood Historic District, a general HOD. And you can see the property here on the map. The nature of the request is to remove a rear one-story addition, construct rear two-story addition and screened porch, construct a rear deck, remove and replace front porch floor, remove concrete front steps, construct painted brick front steps, remove fencing, construct fencing, replace shingle roof, and alter exterior paint colors. This is a view of the front of the property from East Jones Street. And this is further to the west on East Jones Street. Looking towards the driveway, there is a vacant lot directly next door. A view of the front of the driveway and details of the front porch. And this is moving around to the back of the house on the west facade. A view of the rear facade. And again from further in the backyard. And from that same position, spinning around to the north, looking at the remainder of the rear yard. This is a view of the east facade and a detail of the existing rear additions. and back on the sidewalk on Jones Street looking at that east facade. And a packet of information was provided, which you received with the agenda. Of the staff concerns now are just material and construction detail information, which are typically included in the conditions process.
All right, this time I'll recognize the applicant to present their evidence for the application.
Yes, so we were here back in July, and we were asked to come back with evidence that speaks to the significance, the history of the rear portion of the house, the one-story parts, because of the Sanborn maps showing that some portion of it has existed since it was built in 1903. We hope that in the packet you've received, there's enough evidence to basically prove that while a portion of building was there from the very start, it is not at all what it was originally. The character of it has changed many times over the decades. We spent a lot of time around and under the house. Hopefully we gave you enough photographs to make you feel as if you're there. And I mean, we can walk through all of it if you would like, but it's pretty exhaustive and I don't want to waste time, but happy to answer any questions that you may have. But again, in summary, in our opinion, after going through and analyzing the property even more, we do believe that very little of it is in its original character from when the house was built.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in support of the application? Is anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to the case? Are there any members of the public here with questions or who wish to make comments regarding the application? All right, at this time I'll recognize my fellow commissioners for questions.
None, Curtis?
I don't have anything.
Oh. 98 pages, no questions?
I found this very thorough.
I agree. Hey, Aaron, I've got a few questions.
Okay.
Seems like that's my job here, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely commend the updated report. It's exhaustive, so thanks for adding all the detail. I think I said it last time, but the overall design, I mean, I love where this project's going, so definitely want to see it, you know, come to fruition. Have a couple questions. And I've asked staff for some input before asking these questions, but one area I'm just struggling with, there's a lot of references to guidelines 3.2, which is where the guidelines talk about additions. And the first paragraph of that talks a lot about, you know, buildings evolving over time. And so, you know, despite being altered, they can still be significant, especially when they are, you know, this old. And so, so I'm struggling with that because even if it's a very postmodern update to it, at some point it could still be part of the history of that structure. So that's one thing I've been trying to reconcile since I've been reading the updated report or application, and just a few areas that I'm specifically struggling with that I hope you could answer to. One is the Sanborn maps. I appreciate the detail of the comparison. I'm having a hard time telling where it actually deviates much after 1909, which is just 6 years after it was constructed. So I was hoping you could help me understand that, because from 1909, the 1914 and 1950 look pretty similar to me. And I know we both understand that they were probably not drawn in computer-aided design software. So they could, like, little nuances of a map could change, but to me, it doesn't seem like the footprint changed much, but maybe pieces were enclosed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can walk you through what I think happened, what we think happened after putting a lot of thought into it. So if we look at, on page 8, and that is the first Sanborn map from 1903, where it shows the L-shaped two-story portion of the house, and we know the front porch has changed over time, but that's not what's in question, it's what's in the rear. So it does, this drawing does indicate that there was a long one-story piece of the property, and then an open-air sliver for probably a side porch right next to that. We think that that back of the house, back of the two-story portion where it touches the one-story portion, we think that was a combination of maybe a kitchen that, I mean, finding that fireplace mass down in the crawl space kind of said a lot to us about that was probably the rear exterior of the house at one point, probably at this point, and then maybe an extended roof to have an outdoor porch on the other side of the fireplace. So that's what we think possibly the original condition was. And then coming along to 1909, you see kind of turning the corner from that outside porch 90 degrees. They basically just added another sliver of a porch right off of the other part of the two-story portion. And then in 1914, weirdly, they added yet another little tiny sliver to that L-shaped, now L-shaped porch, and then possibly closed in some of the addition, especially that last part, which is currently a bathroom. So maybe that was even the first bathroom in the house, because I doubt this house had plumbing in it in 1903 when it was built. And then 1950, it basically stays the same, but many interior and exterior changes happened because those porches that became the L shape closed in completely to be heated space, which are used as kind of secondary spaces in the house right now. So if you were to walk through the plan of the house, it's very clear it's not original.
Yeah.
Those portions. So anyway, I mean, I don't know if that helps, but it's basically that whole back of the house has changed character, both programmatically and architecturally, since the early 1900s.
The only thing I would add is, I'm sorry,
Oh, yeah.
on page 13 and 14, I think when you get into the foundational issues, that's where we think that the house was probably extended, the back was extended at some point in time, because there's old brick and then new brick, and it just so happens the new brick and old brick meet essentially where that fireplace was, which would make sense of having a fireplace at the end of a structure instead of in the middle of a structure. So we think it extended about 10 feet out at some point in time, and then after the closed in. So that wall you see is gone. It is sheet rock now.
Yeah,
But
where that division is, where the new brick is. So old original brick came out to, and then there was the end of the fireplace. And then there's new brick that's filling in posts or piers. That's why we think that was a porch that was extended to make that show up on the Sanborn map, because it probably was covered, whereas the side porch was not covered.
Okay. So, it is possible that, that tie-in of the masonry could be from some other repair along the way. I mean, I think it's fair to speculate the porch idea, because maybe it was like piers and curtain, and then maybe that was rebuilt with some subsequent renovation. Just to go back real quick, Aaron, and I'm sorry to dwell on this, but on page 9, there's the 1914 and 1950 Sanborns. They look like almost identical images. So I'm just wondering if maybe there was an updated image, or I would just like to hear one more time what happened between those time periods.
1914 to 1950?
Yeah, because to me, the Sanborn map samples on page 9, they look almost identical, and I'm just I'm having a hard time gathering what changed.
Sure. And I mean, I don't know what changed in that time period, but from 1950 on, we know that the L-shaped porches became heated space. and also the rear. We think that some of the interior windows were reused along, because we do think that one window on the side is an original window to the house. Pretty sure that, I would guess between 1914 and 1950. To me, this is pretty significant. We think that the pitch of the roof changed, because if you look in the document, I'm not sure which page it's on, but the one window that I do believe was a regular size window, regular to the house window, has been shortened, and all of the siding has been repaired or new around that, which leads us to believe that the original shape of the roof changed probably somewhere around that time. So that's pretty significant, because I think that it really changed the look of the house. And then from that point on, you can see we provided a bunch of photographs to show, originally it came out as a gabled roof, and then it had a little kink to it, and then they added another like 5 feet, and then it was just, and also at the end of the house, this was probably well after the 50s, probably the 90s maybe, the doors and windows that go basically floor to ceiling were added. Yeah, that was post 1950. So again, I think what really happened after 1950 is the enclosure of pieces, and probably between 1914 and 1950 is when the change of the roof happened.
Okay. Follow-up question, and you know, these questions are coming from a place of, you know, concern about, you know, historical significance, because, you know, the responses make a lot of statements that they are not significant, but I feel like that's a subjective phrase.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
so, and, you know, part of our duty is to make sure we're aligned with that and with the guidelines and the special character of the district. And, you know, Oakwood is a district that has you know, it's one of the earliest districts, but it also evolved over probably the widest amount of time. So my follow-up question is any of the material in the one-story portion on the back worth reusing in your project, or would that be considered, or taking stock of?
We have talked about that, reusing especially the one window that we believe is original to the house, because we think it was on, kind of flipped on 90 degrees on an exterior wall, or the old kitchen wall. And I mean, we certainly would entertain the idea of reusing the siding if possible. And if not, I mean, it's always been our goal to reuse or use the same profile so that it matches. But there's not that much siding that's in good enough shape, especially around the porches that are the L shape. I really do think that they took siding off of the original back of the house and then patched it on, because there's really small pieces of siding to kind of make that work.
Yeah, it's not very long links.
It's not, no. So that makes us think, and you know, we think that they did a very similar, I'll call it DIY kind of weekend warrior projects with brick too, where it was like, oh gosh, we got to reuse this, and it's there's some sloppy stuff going on down in the crawl space of that portion of the house, especially.
My last question, and then I'll let other people speak, is I appreciate the details about the fireplace. It honestly looks like my fireplace in my 1923 bungalow. It looks like the way it's framed in the basement. And so my question is there a chance that maybe it was, you know, out in the center, but there was maybe partitions around it so that it was, you know, 2 smaller rooms in that addition, or, you know, with the porch theory that there was a room and then there was a porch beyond it, so maybe it was at the back of that, you know, that first room. Because I mean, on the exhibit you shared of the plan of the interior, it's a little hard to tell where it ends up in the overall addition, but it seems feasible that, you know, there could have been walls that met it at one point.
Yeah, and I would say maybe at one point, certainly, but I personally don't believe that that was original for sure, just given the character of the foundation, that it was a full foundation wall and then piers. That really leads me to believe it was a porch. So when they filled it in, maybe it was another room on the end of it, and then they decided to make it one big room. I mean, who knows? But I really don't think that was original.
Okay. Thanks for answering my questions. That's all I've got. Wes?
Barton, do you have any questions?
No, not at this time.
Jordan?
No, not at this time.
Curtis?
Just quickly, what I'm hearing you saying is that the aggregate of evidence up on the back portion of that house shows that it's not original, and that it has many components that may have been original and relocated, but the current arrangement of them is not where it started at any point in
Yeah,
reasonable past.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's it.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, I will close the evidentiary hearing, and we will now proceed to committee discussion.
To me, it's kind of a no-brainer that it is congruous with the guidelines, that there has been a lot of modification over time. I think the design we're looking at works very hard to be compatible with the rest of the house and congruous with the character of the house. So to me, it's a yes, with the suggested conditions from the staff.
Hope you can see why I'm struggling with the sort of the evolutionary story of the
Absolutely.
of the house. Like, it doesn't have to be good to be part of the story of the house.
Absolutely.
And especially over a 110-year period.
And all the evidence that's presented certainly shows that it was constantly changing over that time period. It never parked itself and sat for very long. And the array of windows and French door at the rear, something we see in many structures in Oakwood from the 70s and 80s. And yeah, usually pretty badly done, I might add. But yeah, I see absolutely where you're struggling, and I can see how this could be a case that, if approved, wasn't necessarily unanimous because of that. But
Yep.
that's it.
Any additional comments?
Not at this time.
Barton?
No.
Jordan?
No.
Curtis, would you like to make a motion?
Oh, lucky me. Okay. Feels like it's been an age since I have. I move that, based on the evidence, the application, the evidence presented in both hearings, that we approve the COA with the following conditions. One, that the fiber cement or composite siding be painted and installed with the smooth side facing out. Two, that the porch screening material be installed on the interior of the railing. Three, that the following be provided to and accepted by staff prior to issuance of the blue card. Manufacturer specs and sections for the windows, manufacturer specifications and section for the front door, revised tree protection plan showing construction access and material storage. Four, that the following be provided to and accepted by staff prior to installation or construction. A, siding reveal and specifications. B, manufacturer samples for paint if changing. C, manufacturer specifications for shingles. D, manufacturer specifications and section for skylight. E, details for exterior materials, including the soffit, door, and window casing, corner trim boards, and fascia. F, fence design, dimensions and location. G, construction details, including section of screen porch. H, construction details, including railing section, if any, for deck. I, construction details and brick specifications for the front porch steps. J, HVAC location and screening. K, drawing showing installation locations for gutters and downspouts, if any. And L, exterior lighting specifications and location, if any.
Is there a second? I will second the motion. Any discussion on the motion?
And one of the things that certainly was in my mind when I was doing this is the discussion about trying to reuse elements. We could add that as a condition at the end.
Yeah, I think that would be good, Curtis.
Okay.
Do you have to reread? Staff, does he have to reread all
How
the?
about we say add a possible condition 5, or condition 5, that historic elements of the house be reused where possible.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Just for clarity of the record, I'm going to conduct a roll call vote. So I'll just call each individual commissioner, and they will vote aye or no. Curtis?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Barden?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
All right, aye as well. Unanimous. So thank you. The application was unanimously approved. We thank you for the time, I'm sure the immense amount of time that it took, especially in between the last meeting that you were before us and this meeting. A very thorough work product you put in front of us, and I think the entire commission was pleased with that. So thank you so much.
That's a lot of Rob, too.
And
Crawling around.
I'd love to acknowledge, too, that Erin's a former commissioner, so she's been on both sides of the table.
Yes, yes. That is very true. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next is COA 0074 2022 602 South Boylan Avenue. The applicant, please come forward. Is there any member of the committee who has an interest in this matter or otherwise feels that they cannot be impartial in hearing this case? Seeing none, I'll have each person who will be presenting today please state your name and address for the record.
Brooke Tate, 509 Burton Street.
Sarah Baum, 602 South Boylan Avenue.
And I will note that the property owner is present. Will each of you be presenting, I assume?
I'll present, but if she needs to chime in, she
Okay.
will.
Let's just go ahead and swear both of you in just for economy. So, yeah, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. At this time, I'll recognize staff to make a presentation.
All right, this is case COA 0074 2022. This case was also heard in July and is now back in front of you. It is 602 South Boylan Avenue in the Boylan Heights Historic District, which is a general HOD. The nature of the request is to construct a second story on the rear addition and remove a dormer. And you can see from the map here, this is a corner property at the intersection of South Boylan and West Lenoir. This is a view of the front of the house from South Boylan. And this is a view kind of from the sidewalk at the intersection. The view from West Lenoir. A detail of the West Lenoir facade. A lot of the discussion in the previous meeting revolved around the adjacency to the house to the west. So this is a view of the existing conditions. And we also, in our site visit, took a photograph of the existing conditions. This is from the alley on the other side of that house to the west. So you can see here what it currently is like. And this is a view of the south facade. So the applicants have provided some new materials, which we'll pass out, and they will discuss with you, but in our, I did not make too many revisions to the staff report. The concern is still that built mass to open space compares the existing, not the original, and then the standard material detail information. In reviewing the application, I also noticed, I'm not sure if there was some confusion last time, but I wanted to draw attention to the fact that the dormer is proposed to be removed. I know that a lot of the discussion in the last meeting was how the the garage, and the second story would relate to the adjacent house. But the dormer portion is going away, and so that the height there would be reduced. And I believe that some of the new materials include dimensions for that.
This time I'll recognize the applicant to make their presentation.
Good evening. Thank you, Colette. Based on staff's kind of revision of their recommendation to you all, that it wasn't clear that the existing dormer is actually moving back 7 feet 7 inches, so from the street, while the mass is going up 3 feet, or 3 feet 3 inches to the eave, it's perceived as less from the street. So what we did after your concerns of massing on that corner was, A, look for precedents of other properties in Boylan Heights that were less than 10 feet with a large mass on a smaller mass. And B, we kept a water table there to break up that facade, to bring that proportion down on that elevation. I can draw your attention to pages 25 and 28 with those revised elevations. And there's a 3D drawing on page 7 and 8 that shows it a little more clearly. If you look at page 8, that's kind of the essence of what the concern was. Before, there was no breaking up of that 2-story facade. And so we've kept the existing garage roof running front to back, just like it is now. And we've essentially kept the dormer-like effect of what is there now, but tied it into the rest of the house. So I feel like we addressed the concerns from before, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. There's also the precedence of the other houses, which is on page 6. It's 3 different areas that are, I think one's 6 feet apart, one's 5 feet apart, and one's 9.5 feet apart, where you've got, at least on 2 of them, you have a large 2-story and a small 1-story right within 10 feet of each other. Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak in support of the application? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Any members of the public with questions or comments on the application? At this time, I'll recognize my fellow commissioners for questions.
I'll go. Hey, Brooke. Thanks for the updated information. Got a few questions. I know last time we asked, trying to process this quickly, the new material that's been provided. I know last time we talked about if a survey was available of the existing footprint of the house in relationship to the property lines. Is that in this? Because you've provided some dimensions with these 3 on page 6, and I
did not put in the actual survey, but it's on, our site plan is based off of the survey, so it's.
The reason, well, I don't know if I'm supposed to say the reason why I'm asking, but I'm going to say it because I did a very similar measurement, just like what's on page 6 for this case. And it's much tighter to each property line than these precedents, just for whatever that's worth.
Oh, I was saying those are from mass to mass, not to property line.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like that house is 5 feet off the property line. Our house is 5 feet off the property line, so it's 10 feet apart.
Okay.
I did
Sure.
not show that. I probably should have now
It's all right.
looking at it. But yeah, it's 10 feet from their house to the neighboring house. That's why I used that number to look for others that were
Okay.
actually closer than that.
Okay. I would appreciate seeing that on a dimension drawing, because doing this type of measurement
Yeah.
with IMAPs, it's not 5 feet from the property line.
Okay.
It's not even close. So that's where I'm going to continue to struggle with the built mass, because it's so close to the property line already.
Right, but I'm not going over what the existing plane is. It's the same thing that's there now that was approved. It's just, going up 3 feet taller and then actually going back 7 feet 7.
Can I add that I would be reluctant to hold a measurement from IMAPs with any, conviction that that is accurate.
I understand that, but I asked for a survey last time and that wasn't provided. So took matters into my own hands.
Any further questions, Rob?
Not at this time.
Barton?
No.
Jordan?
No.
Curtis?
No, I see this very clear application as far as what's being proposed.
All right. Any final questions from commissioners?
For staff, I noticed that, actually a question for the applicant. One of the staff's additional detail questions was whether there are changes to mechanical equipment that would be outside, in particular, or pretty much in the same spot. Is the intent?
The intent would be the same spot. I don't think we've gotten that far down the road to determine how much more is needed.
Okay.
It's not that, it would be in the same area, so I'm not sure that it would change. It might just be upgrading the unit that's there. I don't know yet.
And intent is that the paint color is changing too?
They just painted their house.
Yeah.
I think it's going to stay
Gonna stay the same?
exactly like it is. And I revised that to match.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also provided the gutters and downspouts. And I'm sorry I didn't provide the survey. I thought I checked all the boxes of what was requested, but that's easy to do. It's just in my computer. I can send it over.
Curtis, you still have that question for staff or no?
Nope.
Okay.
You got it.
All right. Any final questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, I'll close the evidentiary hearing and move to committee discussion.
And where I'm at is I'm really good with it as far as in terms of it being congruous with the guidelines. In terms of the possible conditions that we might put on it, given what's in the new packet, I would revise those possible conditions, getting rid of A and C, because they seem to be solved within the packet itself. Beyond that,
So
I understand your concern. I also understand concern about what would that be, the west face, and what it imposes on the adjacent home. But I also view it as being not that different and not really changing the character of the street wall significantly.
I'm having a hard time because the built mass, 3.211
Yep.
refers specifically to significantly changing the proportions of the original built mass. So just a little bit of scratch math here, because
Yeah.
the parcel to the west was part of that original property.
Oh,
So
interesting. Yeah.
So the original relationship was about 20% built mass to open. The current submitted was around 61.5% built to open, and then this changes it the proposed design changes it to 71% built to open. So I feel like we're not really upholding that part of the guidelines.
Raz, you were about to say something. I could see it coming.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I do think that raises a legal question. We've wrestled with the language of 3.2, 3.11, and 0.12 in numerous cases, and those two subsections establish two distinctly different standards. One focuses on finding a significant change, or it is not reading directly, it's not appropriate to construct an addition that significantly changes the proportion of original built mass to open space on the individual site. 0.12 deals with comparing the massing and scale of this building on this site to surrounding buildings and sites that contribute to the special character of the district. But I think we're focusing on how much is the massing been expanded on the site, and it raises the question of, is the site this lot of record upon which this improvement sits now, or was it the non-subdivided site, which was the original site? It's a different building now than the two buildings sitting on the what was the parent tract, and now it sits on 2/3 of the parent tract. What is the individual site? Do you consider the site to be the parent tract, or do you consider the site to be the lot that now accommodates this improvement? And I don't mean to overcomplicate it, but there is that legal issue there. I have some thoughts on that. But I think that's an issue you have to wrestle with, whether it's the expansion of this structure on this site now, as opposed to the relationship of the improvements to the much larger lot that preexists the condition today. And you could interpret that in varying ways. Volunteer thoughts if you like, but I think that's probably an issue you all have to decide.
I also struggle with the word mass, right?
Because I asked staff for an interpretation, and Colette gave me a detailed explanation about that. It's not exactly codified in the guidelines, and there's also language of built area versus built mass, which then implies the mass is the volume, and which I think, thanks to Colette, says maybe future editions of the guidelines will clarify and codify that a little more clearly.
Because we look at the proposed work here, and the footprint really isn't changing, right? It's literally the height of the back end of it, so literally the volume.
And I know I said this last time, Curtis, and so I think in this case we're talking about the mass potentially being problematic. And I know we're not judging on prior approved COAs, but the reason I was asking about the survey was because it seemed like from reading through the prior COA that 5 feet was suggested by the applicants at that time. And if it's not that, I would at least like a condition, to give some boundaries to it, because I feel like potentially making a mass situation worse. Raz, you're cringing, so I'm concerned about that.
I think the problem mostly arises if you're looking at crunching numbers. If you're looking at percentage increases, obviously the ratio of mass to a much smaller lot leads you to a different percentage of an increase in mass. But I'm not sure if you were to take the parent tract, whether you'd combine the massing of the two structures that are now there. Probably not. Probably you'd look only at, you know, this single parcel, this single improvement sitting on a much larger lot before. So obviously, the math becomes different.
Sure.
And this is an actual issue that I think we're going to see more and more over time in the district. So it's not navel gazing. It's,
yeah.
The other element I think of missing information is the date of construction of that house. Is it within the period of significance for the district? Is that the original we're referring to? Because that would be added to your mass calculation. Just for the sake of the record, the definition that I provided to Rob about how we calculate built mass in the staff report is usually dependent on the information that is provided by the applicant. In most cases, it ends up essentially being heated square footage. Those are the numbers that are provided. It is not truly volume or mass. So any space under the roof is typically not included in that, which would be if we were officially calculating mass.
I'll just say that I would.
Hold on just a second.
Well, are we reopening the floor? Not right now. Okay. I mean, the only other comment I would say is I would have sincerely appreciated more time than a few minutes to review the resubmitted application.
The relative to the whole mass question, one of the things, kind of putting it slightly to the side, that I keep asking myself is the proposed design is whether the proposed design is telling the story of the house and how it developed. And I think it actually still is. We're getting much more plainer situation with the roof forms. And whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but I think it is congruous with the intent of the guidelines that you have a kind of consistent character in the district, and that the page 7 of 47 was the one I was looking at in particular, where it still retains, the house retains its character, the streetscape retains its character. In my mind, that gets it a pass, but it's on the edge of what I'd like to see because it is relatively visually homogeneous.
This time I'll reopen the evidentiary hearing, recognize the applicant to present further information.
I was just going to add, like what Colette just said about mass being under roof. There's roof, we're not changing the footprint, as he said. And in my mind, I would argue that we're really not changing the mass at all. It is visually, enough from the street, and it's only going up 3 feet 3 from what was there. And there was, a high roof over all of that area. So yes, it's a second story, but I just feel like there is gray area on that mass, which is why I didn't recalculate that.
Any questions from commissioners based on the new information from the applicant?
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree about it not being significant mass-wise. So if I'm looking at, I believe this is page 7, is this the dimension that's 3 feet? So it's ridge to lower eave of the existing.
It's the eave of the dormer there up to the, you can see it on page 28 and page 26.
I'm getting there. Give me just a second. But wouldn't a real comparison of mass be ridge to ridge?
The top of the, yeah, but it's still substantially less than the existing roof. of the main two-story portion. That's why it has a lower roof pitch, to keep it down, but still in keeping. No, I agree. It's obviously your building volume, but I'm just not 100% sure on how to calculate built mass, because everybody has done it differently on these applications. So it's hard to put that number it's also different when this lot has been reconfigured to look at that percentage.
No other questions?
Barton?
None at this time.
Jordan?
No.
Curtis?
None.
All right, I will close the second evidentiary portion of the hearing and resume with committee discussion.
I think we should defer it to be able to spend more time with the application.
Everybody's looking at me. I mean, I don't know that it's going to change the outcome. I mean, I guess that's my question for you. I'd support deferring it if you felt it would give you more ability to judge it more thoroughly. Yeah.
Rob, do you need more time to look at what's been presented by the applicant, or do you want something additional or different from the applicant?
I would like to just have time to read it. For one, it's only the application. It's very thorough. I think that's fair to the fellow commissioners. I would appreciate that little bit of data that I asked for about, current setback, just so we understand what that is, not to indemnify anyone with that, but that would be the one piece of information I would like, and not off of an IMAPS, because I understand that that's not credible data. Thanks, Colette.
And if I understand from the applicant, if I heard you correctly earlier, that would be something that could be quickly produced.
Yes, and we can do that as a condition even. I can submit that survey. If it just would rather not have to defer it just for time. I will highlight the only pages that changed. I pointed out everything else in the application stayed the same. So either way.
I just don't feel like that's reasonable to make a judgment based on the amount of time given to review this.
Any additional discussion from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it appears as though deferral may be the motion made and carried, but I just thought I'd make this comment. A lawyerly comment, probably annoying. Significant is not defined in the guidelines. I looked up the term in Webster's dictionary, and significant is defined as a sufficient degree to be worthy of attention or to cause concern. That has been fleshed out by the decisions in prior cases and precedent that's out there. But that's the definition of what a significant change or a significant expansion would be as to the mass criteria.
Okay.
And Rob, your concern in terms of that addition is, I'm pulling this out,
Yep.
but is essentially the overall mass and weight of that high roof and extending out 3 feet below the peak of the existing roof, and it's just its overall impact, correct?
Yeah, that the extension of the second floor, and I'm looking at page 7. I mean, to me, it looks like the second floor addition is as significant as the second floor of the original house. And with it being a corner property, yeah, sure, the address is Boylan, but you experience this house in perspective and you can see both elevations, I think, equally. It's not that I'm necessarily that concerned about daylight between it and its neighboring property because, with south and west exposure towards the end of the day, I think that's probably satisfactory. I think it's also, it's extending on top of the prior addition, which just we're not here to legislate design, so it seems like it's adding a lot of built mass.
And perhaps if we're going to defer it, one of the things we can do is ask that the applicant find a way to visually minimize the additional mass that's back there. Because I share your concern because it is larger and monolithic. And while we're not here to do design by committee, it is, perhaps there's a way it can be handled differently. Okay. Well, I'd like to move that we defer the application to give the applicant some time to reconsider that element of the design and gain the additional data that we've spoken of.
Second.
Motion has been approved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion to defer is passed unanimously. I understand this is probably not what you wanted to happen, but we are all trying to do the best we can with the duties that have been placed on us, and I'm sorry for any disappointment that has been caused, but we will continue on, and we will hopefully hear next month and with good news. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is COA 0094 2022 1807 Willis Avenue.
Thank you.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Dan Becker, 1807 Wills Avenue.
And Laura Jean Becker, 1807 Wills Avenue.
I assume you both are the property owners?
Yes.
All right. Each, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. At this time, I'll recognize staff to make that presentation.
All right, this is case COA 0094 2022 for 1807 Wills Avenue. This is the EL and Ruth Fogelman house, a Raleigh historic landmark. The nature of the request is to construct a rear screen porch addition, implement a master landscape plan, and renew COA 00304CA. You can see here the property is about mid-block on Wills Avenue. And this is a view of the front of the house from Wills. This is a view at the foot of the driveway looking at the front yard. And another view of the house. Moving down the driveway, this is at about the front gate, looking towards the rear yard. And this is again from the very end of the driveway, the paved portion looking into the rear yard. This is from a few steps forward from that previous photo in front of the accessory structure, looking towards the area of the proposed addition. And looking back from where we were just standing. And these are some views of the existing rear yard conditions. Staff concerns the calculations of built mass to open space and standard material detail information. And the applicant did provide some new information that was just shared with you. And we'll turn it over to him.
All right. This time I'll recognize the applicant to make their presentation.
I just wanted to walk through the additional information that responds to the staff concerns in the comments, and I've numbered them the same as their concerns, so you can play matchy-matchy. On the original built mass to open space, I still have a habit of thinking about the older guidelines that had different phraseology, so I missed the nuance of original built mass versus existing. So I did recalculate, and the percentage increase went from 31.86 was the original to the 33.71, and the revised total increase was about 4.5% in the floor area and the way that we have been measuring mass by the number of floors that a property has. The screen porch railing is really a framing member. It's not intended to serve as a railing per se, but I did want to clarify that we are trying to locate the screens in the center of the framing for the porch so that there won't be a sheer screen on the exterior face. You'll still be able to read the elements of that porch post and framing overhead. The fiber cement siding, it will match what is on the back of the house as it is. The brick foundation, we still have leftover bricks from the 1994 renovation, which we have been stacking and restacking and moving around as we do this and that, and it's time to get rid of those things. So we're going to weave them into the new brick, and we will have the opportunity to make a very close match with that. And the metal roof, we're glad to provide details on that. Paint colors will match all the existing colors. Gutters and downspouts will have one gutter and one downspout. That will match what's on the house now. Lighting will provide details. And the fountain really is intended to be a freestanding, not a permanent object, but we're glad to provide whatever we decide to do with that. It's more for white noise and a little bit of interest. Glad to answer any questions. We tried to make a thorough and complete application, probably more pictures than you ever want to see, but welcome your questions.
All right. Seeing that no one else is present here beside the commissioners and the applicants, I will move forward with questions from the commissioners.
I have nothing.
None. Barden?
None.
Jordan?
None.
All right. At this time, I will close the evidentiary hearing portion of the meeting and move to committee discussion.
To me, it's a no-brainer. It's clear. It's low impact. It congruous with the character of the house. Can't ask for anything more.
Yeah. It's a minimal scope of work that, seems like it could also be removed if desired in the future pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a good application.
You want to do it?
Sure. So Wes, based on the evidence provided in the evidentiary hearing and the application, I'd make a motion to approve the application with the following conditions. One, that the fiber cement or composite siding be painted and installed with the smooth side facing out. Number two, that the porch screening material be installed on the interior side of the railing. And condition number three, that the following be provided and accepted by staff prior to installation. Siding reveal and specifications. That's A. B, manufacturer's samples for paint of changing color. C, manufacturer's specification for metal roof. D, specification and color for foundation brick. E, construction details and/or specs for the fountain. F, construction details including section of the screen porch. G, drawing showing installation locations for gutters and downspouts, if any are being added. H, exterior lighting specifications and location of those fixtures, if any.
Second?
I just want to note that the applicant stated that the screening will be installed in the center. So I don't know if we need to clarify number 2, which says it will be installed on the interior, if you want to be specific, or remove that portion,
Well,
just so there's no accidental
and
conflict.
installing in the center has the same net effect of what was desired, so perhaps we strike that condition from
Yeah.
the motion?
Yeah. Strike condition 2.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Good luck. The motion was approved today. The final approval will be official next month when the chair, myself, signs the minutes and the order for this meeting. So thank you so much.
How is it from that side of the table, Dan? I guess it is.
Sure. Chairman, if I may, I knew Curtis would make a statement, and probably everyone present is well aware of Dan Becker's history with the city of Raleigh and with the support and assistance of his wife. But honestly, we're in the presence of greatness here. Dan was among the founding fathers of the Historic Preservation Division of the Planning Department and all of the historic preservation programs of the city. He's modest, so wouldn't go about that himself. But there's quite a history there, and this effort owes a whole lot to Dan and Dan's wife.
And he actually trained the bulk of the country on how to do this.
Well, I will add that your paper files are impeccable. Anytime we have to go dig through a Dan Becker file, we know where things are.
Great. You're following everything just the way it's supposed to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further committee discussion? Any announcements from staff? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.